Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me. For those of you that are new subscribers, again, thank you so much for joining me and coming in and seeing what's new on my channel. Today, I'm going to start a coloring series, and we're going to start with the cheapest way to go about coloring, adding some depth and dimension. I want to show you how to get color and then have to fade it out. So how to bring in the light, how to add in some highlights and shadows. By no means am I a coloring expert at all. I just know what I like and have followed some other tutorials and things like that to just to get these really awesome little results. So this is a card that I worked on last week. So it's going to be, obviously it's a slim line, so this is stamped, and then I colored it using pencil crayons. And so that's what I'm going to show you today. Not this particular image, but that's one of the ones that I've done. And this is the second one. Isn't she just adorable? You can see how there's shades in the hat, in the eyeglasses, right? So you can see where there's light and shadow, even just using something as simple as pencil crayons, okay? Some of them I used even something as inexpensive as Crayola. So these can come from, so here in Canada, we have Dollarama. These are like $2 or $3 or something like that at Dollarama. You can get them at back to school time from Walmart. I think they cost $2 for a pack. Any kind of pencil crayons, wax-based or colored pencils will work with this particular technique. Okay, so this is what I'm going to show you today. So the first thing that we want to cover is what kind of supplies will you need? You're going to need some stamped images. Okay, so I've got a couple of different stamped images here. So I've got some cute little sharks, and I've got another little girl here. She's in a teacup, says, "You're my cup of tea." How nice. I've got these guys here. I love being married. It's great to find that special person you can annoy for the rest of your life, right? So all sorts of images, any kind of images that you would like. They work great, particularly pencil crayons and alcohol ink markers work great for fine details. They're my favorite ways to color for smaller spaces and things like that. Okay, so you're going to need a stamped image. That's what we'll need. And so I am coloring on the kind of cardstock that I'm using today. You can do it, you want it to be somewhat heavier cardstock. So Nina Classic Pressed Solar White, which is an 80-pound, 85 pound. Doesn't have to be as heavy as a 110-pound or anything like that. Just a regular nice cardstock. Can't be too thin, but you do want it to have a nice smooth surface. A smooth surface is really important. Okay. The other thing that you're going to need is a good ink. Now, because we are using pencil crayons today, and but our blending medium is a type of solvent. So you need to have something that is a water-based ink. So you could use archival. You could also use Memento, so black Memento or whatever. The ink that I use and recommend the most, this is an amalgam ink. So this is Gina K Designs, because I'm never sure when I'm stamping. I like to do all of my stamping and then have the images put aside. I have a huge stack that's done here that's ready for coloring, and just when I feel like coloring, I can pull them out. So I like to stamp with one ink that I can use for watercoloring or ink color, or sorry, ink, alcohol ink, okay, or any kind of solvent inks. So I use Gina K Designs amalgam ink. I believe scrapbook.com has a type of amalgam ink. Simon Says Stamp has an amalgam ink. It's a dual formula, so that you can use it with either water-based or alcohol-based or solvent-based coloring mediums, and it won't run. Okay, so this is the obsidian color, but this is the one if you're new to stamping, if you're new to coloring, if you're new to paper crafting at all, I recommend this be your starter ink because you will get crisp lines, nice crisp lines, which is important when you're going to be coloring. But you can use this for sentiments. You can use this for everything. I like to, this is the second ink that I recommend, VersaFine Clair Nocturne. This is if you're doing any kind of watercoloring. This is a pigment-based ink, and it clings to your stamp, and it has a bit of an oil. It's got glycerin in it, so it has a nice viscosity to it that sticks and clings to your stamp and then will transfer to your paper. So this is the best if you're doing sentiments. This one will work good for sentiments. This is the best for sentiments and for anything that is a silhouette. So anything that's like has a lot of coverage on it, this is the best one to use. And then of course, Versamark, which is if you're doing any kind of embossing, watermarking, anything like that. It's a sticky ink, right? But these are the two if you're just starting out. Well, actually, these are the three kind of must-haves. I'm sorry, that seems to be like there's a fire truck or something in the background. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear that or not. But so I'll just keep rambling along and hope that the sound of my voice is going to cover that. These are the three basic inks that I recommend anybody that's a paper crafter start with. You need a Versamark. There's so many different techniques that you can do with this particular type of ink. So it's a watermark stamp pad. You can get a re-inker for it. This is for embossing, like doing heat embossing, watermarking. You can stick mica powders to it, all sorts of things like that. That's the first one. This one is going to give you crisp, clean images. It's the best for stamping your sentiments, but it is a very slow drying ink. And this one here, if you're going to do any kind of coloring at all, whether it's watercolor, alcohol inks, any kind of solvent ink, this is the amalgam ink is the second one that I recommend, all in black. Okay, so talking about your supplies, what are you going to need? Okay, so you're going to need pencil crayons as well. Cheapos from Crayola. I also have here, the ones that I'll be using today these are the Artist Lofts from Michaels. These work great. You don't have to go and invest in Spectrum Noir or fancy pencil crayons. You can if you like, but you don't need to. So for $5 or less, we'll have you with, and even these 24 colors, like this small package here, which costs, I think, $3 or something like that. And that's Canadian, so it's maybe even cheaper in the States. Will get you what you need. You need a good pencil sharpener, whether it's electric or handheld, whatever. I like this particular one because it fits within my travel case here. I can just fit it within my travel case and call it good. But I do have an electric pencil sharpener. Okay. You will need a Gamsol. Okay, Gamsol. You can also use a hand sanitizer. So anything that has a slight viscosity to it. This is called a blending solution. Okay. This one I picked up at Michaels. It's by Spectrum Noir. But you can get many different kinds of Gamsol. The other thing that will work is mineral spirits. Mineral spirits you can get one that has no scent. So if you're sensitive to fragrances, that's the one that I recommend. This does say that it's odorless, but you will notice that there is a small odor to it. These are the basics. So you have to have these items, these three, to start with. Okay. Now, depending on which way you choose to go, okay, the second things that you will need is something to smudge your colors around. Now, these again is something that I picked this up at Michaels. You can get them from other places. You can order them from Amazon. I actually got a bunch from AliExpress, so Temu would carry them. Wish, AliExpress, either or. If you are going to use these are actually blending sticks. They're made out of paper. Okay, so I'll open one here and kind of show you. This particular set has a variety of sizes. So you don't have to have, well, I'll just open them all. So you can see there's a whole variety of different sizes in here. You get fine points, really thick points. Let me use that one. So. But yeah, and so you can see, so with paper now, obviously you don't want to get it too saturated, but essentially what you would do is you color your image, you take your pencil. Okay, so this fine little piece of, I don't know if I can get that close enough for you to see. It's about the same thickness as a pencil crayon. And then you get some here that have really super fine, a little bit finer of a point. Okay. This you would dip into your Gamsol, and then that will help melt and dissolve some of the wax of our pencil crayon that we've colored with, and it will move it around and help it move onto your paper. Okay. In order to clean or to sharpen or to change out the what's the word that I'm looking for? Your to keep your blade or your paper pencil here, sharp and clean, you will need some, this is a whole thing of sanding paper. Comes in a little paddle. This I got off of Valley, but you can also find it in the same places. Also, if you just happen to have some fine grit sandpaper at home, works exactly the same way. Okay, so I'll start with those. My favorite way, though, that I've discovered, this is an alcohol ink blending pen. You can also get the alcohol lift pen. This is by Tim Holtz and Ranger. I actually got this one from Michael's. I was able to use my 30 or 40% off coupon, use a coupon for it. It comes empty. And what I like to do, so it's got two tips on it. So it's got this larger tip on one side and then a smaller tip on the other side here. And you can pull out this tip using your tweezers. I put Gamsol inside here. I like to fill it about halfway, and then that keeps the tips kind of saturated for me. And then I don't have to worry about these things. I just use a piece of side cardstock or something like that, smooshed cardstock, and just kind of wipe it off like with my color from there. So I'll show you, I'll demonstrate both, but this is my particular favorite way and to use. So either of these pens, they come empty, and then you just fill it with your Gamsol or your mineral spirits. Makes it so much easier to utilize. Okay. So I'm just going to get started. What I want to do here is I want to show you, I'm going to demonstrate coloring and how this works with pencil crayons. Okay. So the first one, sorry, I've got something on my desk here. So the one that I'm going to work on are these little sharks that I've been practicing coloring. And so you can see they've kind of got these cute little faces and everything like that. But I'm wanting to add depth and dimension. So I did this using two pencils, one pink one for the mouth, and then a gray or black for adding the shades and the highlights on my shark. So I'm going to color this one in, demoing it, and then I'll move on to the finer one, the little girl in the teacup. Okay. So just to show you that this is possible with Crayola, okay, I'm going to color the shark with Crayola pencil crayons. Okay. Open my Gamsol here. So again, you want to remember that this Gamsol is a solvent. So I carry it in. I have a little funnel here that I got from the dollar store, and a plastic bag that if I'm going and I'm taking my pencil crayons to color with me, it stays, well, it always stays in this bag so that it doesn't possibly spill someplace. But yeah, I want to make sure that I'm treating that kind of gently. So I'm going to start with the pink, and where I want to go is I'm just going to bring in along the edge here. I'm going to follow along the teeth. I don't want to get too much pink or anything on the teeth. This pink might actually be a little too dark, but that's okay. So principles of light and shadow will still take place even though we're using pencil crayons. So obviously the depths of his mouth, okay, so where it's open here is going to have the most light, and in the deep, like behind his teeth and things, that's going to provide shadows. So I want the most saturation of color in like nearest his teeth, right? And then this area here, okay, I want that to be lighter. So as I'm bringing in my shades or my Gamsol, what I'm going to do is, yeah, that should work. Okay, so I'm going to put this in, And you can see now, okay, you can see where it has gotten wet too. So you can see here, so it's darker to lighter, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna go up to the area that I colored, and I'm going to use small circles, but I want to get onto that area where I laid down that color. And I'm going to begin drawing that color. I want it to come into contact with my solvent because it's going to break down the wax of the color that I laid down. And any place that I got a little heavy-handed with my pencil crayon, that's okay. I'm just going to continue to draw that down. Just give me a second here. I'm just going to do this first layer. And we're just smoothing it out. You don't want your paper, your paper stub here, whatever this, I can't for the life of me remember what the heck they're called other than the blending sticks. But okay, what I want to show you now, this is going to be pretty faint in terms of color. You'll be able to see it a little bit better here. But this is where I colored. Okay, so you can see where I, let me see if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see here at the bottom part of his mouth where I've kind of outlined the teeth. Okay, but up at the top here where I've colored or where I've used my smudging tool here, you can see where I've smoothed that out and I've started to bring the color down a little bit. So I'm going to continue to do that here. Bringing the color up a little bit. And I'm trying to stay where I ran with the pink. I don't want to bring the pink into his teeth. I would like to keep his teeth white. I mean, I might go in with a gray or a lighter blue or something just to add some shade to them, but I'm really happy with how they turned out in the other two examples here. So I think I'm just going to leave them kind of the white area here. Now this light pink, it's very, very light, so it's going to be really difficult to see under my lighting that I have here. But you can just, let me see if I can get that in there. There you go. You can sort of just see the hint where it has lightened from the white into the pink. Now I want a little bit more depth of color coming from the sides here. So I'm going to bring in my pencil crayon again. Okay. I haven't changed colors. I'm still using the same color. And I want to bring in a little bit more shadow here. And I want to bring a little bit more shadow on the left. So I'm adding a little bit more tint. Let's see if you can see that. See the difference there? There we go. Yeah, you can just catch just a little bit where I've added some there and some here. So now what I'm going to do, this is still a little wet, but I do want to dip it just a little bit. And I'm just going to go in. And particularly when I'm using this thing, I like to use circular motions. Now, something to really remember is that we need to allow time in between, because essentially what we're doing when we're adding this Gamsol from our smudger or our, what the heck is this thing called? Blending stick. Once I'm adding the Gamsol from my blending stick onto my paper, I'm now making my paper a little bit wet. So I don't want to get too rough with it either. Okay, because if I get too rough with it, then what I'm going to start to do is ball up my coloring image, which I don't want to do. I want to make sure that I'm keeping him in and my cardstock in pretty good shape. So I am adding pressure, but not like coloring super, super hard. Just gonna, this is the nice thing about having your image not on anything, is that you can turn it, just turn the image rather than having to turn everything else. Okay, so I don't know how much that's going to show up there, but you're starting to see a little bit of pink in, grab one of these here. So some of this area here. So this is the white of the stick. You can see I've added some shades and highlights. It's much lighter here than it is on this side here and this side here. With the pencil crayons, you are going to get a subtle result. That's what you're looking for, especially if you're using a lighter color. Now, I'm finished with the pink. I think I'm quite happy with how his mouth looks. And so now I'm going to take my paper stub and I'm going to rub to see if I were to take this now and color, I'm going to transfer the pink that I lifted from the wax on here. I'm going to transfer that to my next color, which I don't want to do. So now, in order to keep the point on, I'm going to drag it across my sandpaper here. Continue to keep the point. Sometimes you have to chop off that last little bit there, but now there's no pink showing on the point of my smudger, my blending stick here. Okay, so now I'm going to color the shark, the body of the shark. And I'm going to use a black, black and I want this thing kind of gray. Gray? Yeah, that's a gray. Okay. Yeah, so we use gray. So I'm going to start with the gray. And then if I want any more deeper shadows, I'll bring in some black just to add in some shades and highlights if I need to. The gray might be just enough. I think I used black on this one, and then I used gray on this one. And they all worked out pretty good. So now I'm just going through and I'm adding just little bits of color to the body, fins, the whatever. And I'm only adding it in certain areas. I don't want to color in the whole thing because I don't need to. That's going to be an awful lot of color. Okay, so I've gone along the edges of his mouth here, and keeping in mind the light is going to touch probably the tops of his body, right? I don't know why I'm calling this shark a he, but that's what it seems to be, I guess. So before I go and color this or smudge it with the blending tool, I will hold this up so that you can see where I've added the shades, the color and whatnot. Okay, so that, this one's got quite a bit of high shadow right there where it looks like it's fold almost. Okay, and then the edge of his face and the mouth here, I want to get this area here. And then just a little bit soft on the edge of his mouth here. Okay. All right. Okay, so you can see here, so I've added a little bit, a line of color here, line here, because you can see where a fold in his body happens there. So that means there's going to be a shadow. That's where we're going to add it. So down here, looks like he's got a bit of a double chin. Means he's going to have a bit of a shadow. So I've colored under the under part of the fin. That would be the darkest. And then there's a little divot here that's a part of the stamped image. So that means there's going to be a fold. That's where his wrist of his fin would be. So that's going to be a shadow place along the outline of his mouth. Okay, there's a little part of his underbody here. This part is covered, so I've caught the back part of his fin, the back. Oh, I didn't catch the back part of his fin. Oh, I just did that. Okay, and then around his eyes, I've also done now his nose or whatever the front part of a jaw, whatever you want to call that. Okay, so you can see it's got this T section here. This is where the light will hit here, but we also want it to um, anything that is light is going to come towards us, darker is going to sink back. So we want to add some light and shadow here so that we can make it look like his face has depth and dimension, like this guy. Like you can see his nose is coming at us, right? Same thing here. Look at, you can see that this part is clearly rounded and at the top of his face. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take my smudge, my blending stick, and I'm going to stick it in my Gamsol again a little bit here, not too much. And now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to start working on his fin. And I want to blend that color out. You can see there's a shadow along the bottom side, and then there's a little bit of a curl in here. I'm gonna come along the side of his mouth, and I'm gonna draw that down. So by only putting the color in certain areas, that makes it easier because it's very difficult, again, to lighten something. Once you've added color, it's much more difficult to take it away than to add. So you want to start lighter and then add color if you need to. Okay, see if you can see that there. See there's jaw there. It gets darker as it's closer to his mouth and then lighter underneath there, just to add a little bit of shape to his body there. And here. Sometimes you'll start to, you get a feel for, okay, do I need to add a little bit more liquid to my blending stick? Just based on what you're seeing in terms of, is my medium, like my pencil crayon, is it starting to smudge? Am I actually moving color around? If you are, then that means you have enough liquid on here. Because again, not only are you coloring on paper, but you're using paper to color too. So you have to watch how much liquid you're using. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about using these things, though, is that you're not getting a huge amount of, just by dipping it in, gives you a little bit more control over how much liquid you are bringing to your project. Because again, the more it is paper on paper. So if you have too much liquid, you could oversaturate it, and then you risk possibly not tearing, but balling your paper. Okay. Now let's have a look. Can you see? So you can see here where there's a little bit of shadow here underneath. Look at how his nose is kind of popping out there a little bit because it's a little darker along that edge there, right where the T is here. I added more color there. Also around his eyes, I want his eyes to be a little, not bulgy, but a little bit bulgy. You can see that there's a little bit more shadow right here. There's a little bit more shadow right here. Now I'm actually going to go in and kind of emphasize those places again by taking my gray. So again, I'm just going back to my gray. I don't need to make it too much darker. And I'm going to go in where some of the shadows, I want to add just a little bit more color in some of those deeper places. Okay. Because I've added my first layer of color here, which is good. That's what I want. I want my first layer. And I've smoothed it out. And now I can see where the shadows and light, like the shadow plays, where is that working for me? Where would I like more of that? Like his eyebrows to kind of pop here. And then there's these two lines down here, which I want to make sure those are really well shadowed, because that's where the stamp is telling me it would have more shadow. Okay. And along his nose again, some more. This area here. Okay. So now you can see, even just like that, look at how much more depth and dimension it has. Now I want to soften all of those, but you can now see he's starting to look like he has body. We want to make him, we want to take it from a 2D to a 3D. And that's where you start to become happier and happier with your coloring, is the more that you can make these 2D images begin to look more realistic. I mean, it's still coloring, so it's not going to be perfect, like a photo finish picture type thing, but it will begin to start to feel more and more real with when you can add all these little tricks of taking it out of 2 dimension and beginning to make them look a little 3D, a little more bodied. Not a lot, just a little. Nobody's expecting perfection here. So all I'm doing is I'm going into all of the places that I added that extra shade. And I want to soften it and blend it out so that it doesn't show. That's often the challenge with pencil crayons, is that they look like that's where you just went and put all of your color. So I'm going to blend this out so that it begins to soften and begin to look more like, not a pastel, but like it has a different feel to it. There's not the shininess of the wax from the pencil crayon still on there, or the colored pencils. I'm sorry, that's a Canadian thing, I'm sure. Pencil crayons. That's what we've always called them, and they're called something different. Colored pencils, whatever. Yeah. Blend that out, soften it. So what it does is it takes all of these harsh, well, what could be harsh colors or harsh lines, and gives it a beautiful feathered edge. Look at the difference on that from where we started. Okay. This is the basics of coloring. This is how you start with just your 2D images and using cheapo pencil crayons. So just to prove to you that it works that way, that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to color the next image. I'm going to put my lid on this before I knock it over, because we all know that that's what's going to be next. And I'm just going to clean this off while I'm here and thinking about it, and before I put these away. So when you're using these paper stubs, you want to drag them along the sandpaper like this, but you also want to continue to move it in various directions, like turning it so that you can keep that fine point. You don't want to just scrub it in one way. You'll end up with a flatter surface on one side versus the other. Okay. So that's using Crayola. And realistically, there isn't a difference or much of a difference in using a different pencil crayon. I just happen to have more colors in my artist loft, so I'm going to use those for the next one, and just to show you the difference. And also how easy it is to then use, these adorable pens. So like I said, this is the alcohol ink blending pen. It comes empty. You'll find it anywhere that you're looking at alcohol inks, particularly the Ranger ones. This is what you would put blending solution in, or you can also get one that is an alcohol lift ink, which you could also fill then with the lifting solution. I like to use this for coloring because it makes coloring so much easier for me, I find. Okay, so for this, I need my image. I need a blank piece of cardstock, white paper, copy paper, doesn't matter what it is. And I'm going to need to choose what to color my little girl here. And I think I'm going to give her a little bit. So she's going to be a fairly light color. And I'm going to start with this. So this is light golden from, oh, these are the Colors of the World by Crayola. I actually got these from the Dollarama, so from the dollar store. And they're these beautiful, I don't know if you can see them, skin tone colors. So there's a whole variety of it in here. So I'm going to use, and I'm going to start with, this is the light golden. And I'm going to start with this. And then I'm going to bring, so this, you can see there's some color that's still on the nib here, but when I draw it out on my clean piece of paper here, there's no color on there. So even though it's been dyed, it's still clean. So now I can bring this in just like this and move my color around just a bit. Okay. Just like that. Now, what I actually want to do is I want to add some shadows. So I'm going to one tone, actually, I think it's 2 tones darker, but this is light medium golden. And I like how it looks with this. So in just a second, I'll hold this up so that you can see where I've added this line. I'm sure it's a pretty faint color, so I'm hoping you can see. So I've done the light pale shade, okay, and then just under her hair, I've added the darker color. Just under her chin here, you can see just the bottom of her arm here, a little bit right here where her arms are crossed, because there would be a shadow from when she puts her arms like this, there's going to be that shadow under there. Okay. So then I'm going to come in here like this and just buff out that wax, that color. Okay. So I want to soften that line and draw that color into the shade that I previously laid down. Okay. Now I don't know if you're going to, yeah, that didn't use up a ton of color. Okay, but now the body of my fairy has been colored. So you can just barely see the color of her compared to the white of the background of the card. Right? I don't know if that's gonna show. There we go. That's a little bit better. Sorry, I don't want to do it too much because then you'll get a shadow from this, but yeah, from my light. There we go. So put this back. So it's a really handy thing to remember not to put your actual pencils back until you're sure that you're done with them, okay? Because what happens then is you'll often end up having to come back to something and you're like, oh, what color did I use? I don't remember. Light almond. Okay. So the other nice thing about having your scrap piece of paper here is you can test out colors. Medium almond. So now I'm just testing the colors that I want to use for my teacup, because that's the next biggest image. So I actually want to color my teacup next. And I think I kind of like this one with this one. So these are, I'm kind of wanting it to look a little bit like a bone china-ish. So I'm going to come in along the edges here. And I don't have to get too specific because I'm going to be drawing this out. So there, again, this is, you know, if it's like bone china, it's not necessarily going to have a ton of color to it, right? So I'm not sure entirely how much of this is actually going to show up on camera. But the image, I'll get you to go back and just have a look at what it looked like to start with versus where we finished, right? That's where you're going to see a really big difference. And I'm going to finish it on a card, and the surrounding colors will really help it pop out. All right, so I've now laid down my base load of color, and now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to draw it along and kind of just give it a good buff out, moving it along, saturating the paper, but mostly I don't need to saturate all of the paper. It's not like alcohol inks. I want to make sure that I'm just moving and making that the wax base move along a little bit, okay? We want that color to shift, to move, to kind of become soluble and move along. Okay. Now, you're starting to see this is popping off of the page just a little bit, okay? But now I want to come in with my darker color because I want to add the shadows of where this would be, right? Because as the cup goes along the bottom here, it's going to have a shadow where it comes and touches to the teacup or the saucer. It's going to have a shadow. So, and the stamp, fortunately enough, has helped me out. You can see here, it's got lines where the shadows are. So you can see there's an extra little bit of line here. That means that that has some depth and shadow. There's a line here. There's a line going up this way. There's a little bit right here. Okay, there's some on the handle of here, on here. Okay, so obviously the underneath of my saucer would have a shadow because there's not going to be as much light as there would be on the top, right? In the depth in here, there's going to be some shadow in this area here because this is where the teacup would be sitting. So let's add that. And there's going to be a little bit here. Let's catch, so the underside here of the handle. Okay, so you can see, I don't know for sure if you can see that or not. It's getting too much shadow in there. Yeah, there you go. So you can see where I've added some extra of that lighter kind of, it's kind of a fleshy tone, but it actually is, you know, as I'm looking for that kind of bone china look, I want it to be a little more soft and kind of translucent. Now, where I forgot that there would also be some area is here under her from where she's laying on the teacup. There would be a bit of a shadow there as well. Okay, now she is starting to blend in just a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to add some other colors, make her really kind of pop off of there. I'm pretty happy with how that looks. Now, I want to color in. I want to do her lips and the roses because I want them to be sort of the same colors to make that really pop off of her. I might have to come in and add a deeper tone to her. We'll see once I'm done, but I can add that in a bit. I don't have to do it like right now. And I want to do cherry red and dark pink. Fine. That's kind of a nice color. Let's give that a little bit of a sharpen. Okay. So I'm going to come in here and I want to add a little bit of red just to her lips. And I am actually just going to color those in and then just bring in my pen here just a little bit. I don't want to add too much because it's a really small area. And with reds, you see, now you can see here. So this is, I just touched that tiny little area of her lips and there's just a little bit of red actually coming out of my pen here now. So like, look at how small her lips are. And it actually was enough to create that area there of having to clean it out. So now I want to come in here with the red, like that, and under here, then here. And one more here. Okay, so I want you to see how little color I have added to those flowers. They're very small areas, so I don't want to add too much color. There's also a teeny tiny little heart right here that I'm noticing. So I'm going to add just a skosh, like it's like a drop of color in that little heart on that tea bag. Because as I add and move this along, that teeny tiny little bit of color has shifted into the whole of my piece there. Start to see we're adding just a little bit of color in there. Now there's a couple of areas where I do want to add a little bit more depth and highlight. So I'm just going to come in here again a little bit, very light-handed. It doesn't need to be heavy. This is small images. There we go. So all I'm doing, I know it's really difficult to see, but all I'm doing is touching the Gamsol that's in my pen here enough to move that little bit of color because pencil crayons leave like a really sharp line, right? And I don't want to be seeing these sharp lines. Not what it, oh, she's got a rose in her hair. Would you look at that? Okay, so I want to bring in this rose for them. So this here. And there. And there, it looks like. Okay. So now I'm just drawing the color out of this so that that's what I'm doing on this piece of paper here, so that when I go to color the next color of whatever I decide to use, I'm not going to transfer the red color, which is very rich and deep, into my other colors that I've got on the go here. So I've got some leaves here, so I need a couple of greens. I want something that's going to go nicely with my red. It's all right, but yeah, that's nice. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little bit of dark green here into these areas. So some of these areas are so small, I don't need to add color into them, because what's left on my, I'll call it a pen for a better, lack of a better term here, will already have enough saturation from what it's picking up here. If I add too much color, it'll actually end up bleeding out of the lines on my image, which I don't want. Okay, and then we've got a few back here, and this color here. And let's see if we can get that light green in there too. So do one of light green here and light green here. Okay. More light green in there before I move to the dark green, because I'll have to clean out my brush again. Oh. And the dark green. Yeah. Okay. Now, for her hair, I think I would like her to be brunette. These are deep roots. That's interesting. This is extra deep rose. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this deep rose color, and I'm just kind of going to follow some of the curl lines that they've got here for her hair, because most of the color will be drawn out again by my Gamsol pen, right? So I don't have to have a ton of it in here. I want to add my base shade, and then I can go in and add any highlights that I feel like I need to. Again, it's easier to add color than it is to take it away. It's very difficult to get rid of color once you've added it down. Okay, so now you can start to see, so I've added a little bit of green, a little bit of red, a little bit of brown. Now I want to add the darker tones into her hair here. Okay, so I am just going to go along where some of these, I don't want to add as much color as what I had done with the slightly lighter tone there, but I do want to have some, because I want to add, again, some depth and dimension to her hair. Okay, so you can see where I've kind of added. You can see how, look at how much of an impression that line of color makes. So it really stands out. That's what we don't want. We want that to be blended into the other shades. We want those depths and tones, but we don't want it to be so harsh of a line. Okay. Let's bring that there underneath. So, all right, much better. Mhm. Now it looks like there's shades and highlights. Yep, missed one. This one shows up really well in the camera that way, actually. Look at it. Okay. We can tell she's got depth and tone to her hair, because even somebody who doesn't color their hair, they will still have lighter tones, darker tones, mid tones, things like that. So now I'm going to add just a bit of gray to her wings, just to give them a bit of color. I don't want a ton. And then what I like to do is I come in and add just a bit of stickles, or I like to use Nouveau drops, the glitter drops, and just add a little bit of shine and stuff once I'm done coloring and ready to leave it to dry. But this will add just a little bit of depth to the wings. And then, like I said, I'm going to add glitter over top. So you're not going to see it. It's not going to look like she's got dirty wings, but it does add that bit of depth to them. Draw that out, that little bit of color anyways. Okay, now oh, need a little bit of that down in the tea bag here. Okay. All right, now I need to decide on what color do I want to make her dress. And I'm kind of thinking a really cute purple or blue would be really nice, really nice for this. Let's see here. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Oops. Sorry, creaky chair, creaky chair. Oh yeah, that'll go nice with the cardstock I chose. Okay, so this little froth, you can see this little froth here. That's what I'm going to make her dress. Now, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a whipped cream or something, but I'm going to make it her dress so that it looks like she's got like this frilly tutu-y type dress on, right? That's kind of, well, that's what I'm aiming for anyway. I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what I'm going to color it. I've never seen an image of this before, so I don't know for sure. That's, like I said, an assumption, which is the fun thing about when you're doing coloring and paper crafting. Sometimes it's nice to have an image to go from. Sometimes it's really nice to just use your own imagination and just say, nope, that's what I'm making that into. Okay, so I've added just a brief layer of color down just around where all the little swirls are. And now I'm going to take my pen in and I'm going to loosen up that color and I'm going to draw it out. So what I'm doing now is, again, I'm just laying down the base layer of color. think I am going to have to add a little bit more deeper tone to her arms and stuff. She blends it in with the teacup a little bit too much. Now that that area is kind of dry, she just looks like a little porcelain-y herself. Okay, so there's my first layer of color. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to add a little bit more color in some of these areas. You don't necessarily have to press hard. You can if you want, but you don't have to. You can just let the ink of your crayon do the work for you. So these are the areas where I feel the light source would be a little bit more in shadow. Not a lot, obviously, but enough that I want a little bit of highlight there. So all I'm doing again, I've added some fairly heavy duty coloring. I laid down, well, not a lot of color. I mean, realistically, it's not a lot, but it was enough that it created that harsh, heavy line. So now I'm going in and I'm just letting the Gamsol draw out that color a little bit so that it starts to blend into the first layer of color that I put down without seeming harsh. And we're not looking for harsh lines. Okay. Here we go. She's so cute. Okay, I'm going to take that color out of there, my little blending tool. I'm going to add these guys back to my coloring here, and I have this one in here. And now I want to add a little bit more to her arms because I think she's a little pale for what I want her to be. So, see, and this is why you're not supposed to put your crayons back because I can't for the life of me remember which color I used. There we go. That'll work. So all I'm doing now is adding a little bit of color in a few areas because I want to differentiate between her, the little adorable little girl having a snooze in the teacup here, and my teacup. So darkening up her a little bit, adding a little bit more tone to her arms, to her colored flesh here. And that tone is still not what I want, so let's go with one darker. So you can see she's starting to pop off of there. Oh yeah, look at that. That's actually not bad in that color. Okay. But I am darkening her up a little bit, so I've added just a little bit along the line, along the edges where her would be hanging off, because it's where there's going to be a shadow. And I want to soften that color, blend it in. I think I might have to add just a tinge of pink to her cheeks. Just to make her look like she's got some life in her. So I'm going to take this. Yeah, it's pink. So now I'm going to go just to where her cheek area is here. I'm just going to draw a little dot there and a little dot here. Now that looks pretty heavy. I don't know if you can see that there. There you go. So you can see it. And it looks a little heavy. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go in, just draw a little circle there. And now it looks like she's got just a lovely little rosy highlight in her cheeks. This one came off a little too much. Let's do that. Oh my goodness, this is so cute. Okay. Now I always like to clean this off before I put it away because otherwise I might forget, and it also will, the color will sit and possibly like really stain the tip of my little brush. So that is all I'm going to do on our little teacup fairy today. She turned out so cute. So you can see now I've added enough color. I don't know. Yeah, now you can start to see there's a difference now between the white of my paper and the bone color of my china teacup here. Okay. And then look at her. So she's got depth, dimension. So she actually looks like she's sitting and has shade on there. Okay. So now what I've chosen is I'm just going to pop this onto a card. It already has a sentiment on it. That's the really nice thing about this particular stamp. I'm going to pop this onto my card here. And just like that. So give me a second here, grab some adhesive. The adhesive that I'm using is Barely Arts Precision Craft Glue. And it has this wonderful tip on it. I really like this tip compared to the art glitter glue one that I've used previously. They're pretty much the same, but I have had less plugging with this one, I will say, which I'm assuming is the actual glue, but okay. Now I'm just gonna go in here and eyeball it a little bit. So push it down. Oh, that's so cute. Okay, and then as promised, we'll add just a little bit of glitter and highlight to her wings so that it looks like they're wings. So I'm just taking my Nouveau drops here in the crystal. Oh, I'm gonna have to look at the name because I can't remember the name now. And I'm just kind of following the lines a little bit. Just coloring that in a little bit there. Now this will have to dry now for 24 hours before I were to give this to somebody or something like that, but still so cute, so cute. And then because, you know, lipstick is supposed to be kind of glittery, I'm just going to add just a little bit on her lips there. Kind of push it down a little bit. So for the glitter drops, White Blizzard, that's what this one is. And there we go. That is our card for today. I hope you really enjoyed this coloring session. I know there was a lot of information, but we did anyway, we did 2 different examples. And like I said, when I'm dealing with details, pencil crayons and alcohol inks are my favorite ways to color details. Alcohol ink markers is going to be the 3rd in this series. So you can consider this coloring 101 using pencil crayons. Coloring 201, which will be the next video coming up, is going to be using water-based markers. Now you can use Tombow markers, you can use Crayola dollar store markers, anything that is water-based, that's what we're going to be, or dye-based markers, that's what we're going to be using for the next one. And I love to use those for landscapes. So that's going to be the next video. So keep an eye out for that one. I can't wait. yeah, anyway, I hope if you have any questions, please do leave them down in the comments. I'd be happy to answer whatever I can. And have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night. Bye-bye.